Just after 10 p.m. in Rivergate, Oregon, patrol officers Grant Parker and Leah Jensen signaled a dark sedan to pull off Sycamore Avenue. What began as a routine stop immediately felt off the moment the driver, Eloise Carter, steered under the flickering street lamp. Calm and unhurried, she didn't match the nervous profile they'd expected. In fact, neither officer realized they'd stopped the wrong woman, the very mother of Rivergate's mayor. Eloise's composure was unshakable. She sat upright behind the wheel of her charcoal Ford Crown Victoria, hands folded calmly atop her late husband's keepsake rosary. Grief lingered beneath her measured breathing. Just hours earlier, she'd led a candlelit vigil for civil rights attorney Malcolm Carter, who'd passed 1 week ago. 42 years of marriage and a lifetime of activism melted into candle smoke and silence, and Eloise had hoped tonight's drive would soothe her aching heart. Instead, the buzz of the police lights painted wet pavement in red and blue. Rivergate's trimmed hedges and picket fences, normally bathed in a soft, trusting glow by 9 p.m., now stood witness to an uneasy tableau. Porch lights were long ago extinguished. Neighbors inside their homes believed nothing untoward would happen on these quiet streets. Yet here, under misty lamps, dignity and authority clashed in the humid night air. Parker and Jensen assumed authority, believing Eloise a simple out-of-town motorist. They didn't yet know her name or her legacy. For Eloise Carter, this stop marked the start of a reckoning years in the making. And as the officers approached, unprepared for the force she carried in her poised gaze, Rivergate's stillness began to crack. Rivergate's mist clung to every surface, lamp posts glowed dully through the haze, and damp pavement reflected an unsettling tableau of blue and red strobes. Eloise Carter eased her Crown Victoria along Maplewood Drive, her posture perfect despite the ache beneath her ribs. At 68, she moved with the grace of someone accustomed to leadership. Her years teaching Sunday school and organizing food drives had honed her calm under pressure, yet grief still shadowed her gentle smile tonight. Just minutes earlier, she'd stood among flickering candles at Greenwood Park, honoring her husband Malcolm's legacy. 42 years by her side, he'd been a stalwart defender of the powerless. Her navy dress and gray wool coat, worn first at his memorial, still bore the lingering scent of lilies. Pearl earrings trembled with each passing beam of headlight, and a simple bun held her snow-white hair in place, a testament to her quiet dignity. As Eloise rounded a bend onto Oakwood Drive, she sensed them before she confirmed, a patrol SUV following just a block behind. At first, she chalked it up to routine patrol, an innocuous coincidence. But when her next 2 turns did nothing to shake the SUV, tension settled in her chest. After all, she'd lived nearly 7 decades as a black woman in America. She knew instinctively when she was being watched. Gently, she flicked on her hazard lights and guided the Crown Victoria to the curb beneath a flickering amber lamp. Her heart stirred, not with fear, but with that older ache. A residual of countless times her identity had been called into question. She set her hands upon the wheel and exhaled slowly, readying herself. The SUV's door thudded open behind her, heavy-soled boots crunched on damp concrete, announcing the arrival of Officer Leah Jensen. Eloise reached into her handbag, retrieving her wallet and vehicle registration. She laid them deliberately on the passenger seat, side by side, ensuring everything was within easy reach. Then she folded her hands in her lap, back straight, breathing even. Beneath her calm exterior churned memories of Malcolm's firm voice urging dignity in the face of injustice. Tonight, she would live those words. Across the softly humming street lamps, Grantwood hedges stood silent guard. The neighborhood, where porch lights clicked off by 9 p.m., and where a borrowed rake was always returned, now held its collective breath. 2 officers approached, prepared to confront a mere driver. They had no idea the strength waiting behind that windshield, a mother, a widow, and the keeper of a legacy that refused to be silenced. Officer Leah Jensen's flashlight beam danced across Eloise Carter's windshield, slicing through the night's mist. With each step, Jensen's crisp uniform and clipped voice spoke of zero tolerance. Behind her, Officer Grant Parker remained a silent sentinel. They believed Eloise a simple motorist, unaware she was anything but. "Driver, lower your window," Jensen commanded. Eloise obeyed, rolling down the glass with deliberate calm. The light flooded her face, revealing soft lines etched by activism and compassion. "License and registration," Jensen barked. Eloise glanced toward the passenger seat where her documents lay plainly visible. "They're right here, officer," she replied, voice even. But Jensen lingered, her gaze traveling from Eloise's white bun of hair to the Georgia plates on the sedan. Suspicion flickered in her eyes. "What are you doing on this street tonight?" Jensen pressed, leaning in. Eloise inhaled steadily. "I live 2 blocks over," she said. "I was coming home from a vigil." At the mention of Malcolm Carter's name, Jensen paused, uncertainty flashing behind her stern expression. "A vigil?" she echoed. Eloise nodded. "He passed away last week, 42 years together." The silence stretched, then Jensen flicked her eyes to the out-of-state plates again. "When did you move here?" Eloise sat unruffled. 3 months ago, to be near my son." Another pause. The officers exchanged a look. Then Jensen squared her shoulders. "Ma'am, step out of the vehicle." Eloise blinked. "May I ask why?" Jensen's voice sharpened. "Step out now." Under the trembling amber light, Eloise unbuckled her seatbelt. She rose slowly, hands visible, palms turned outward in a gesture of non-threat. The mist swirled between them, turning her resignation into quiet defiance. From across the street, the muted glow of hedges and fences seemed to press closer, like watchful eyes. Eloise's respect for the law had never wavered, but she also knew rights were not optional. Tonight, she would stand on principle. As she placed a foot onto the slick pavement, the Crown Victoria's door creaked shut behind her. Officer Parker circled around, flashlight trained on Eloise's midsection. "Keep your hands where I can see them," Jensen warned. Eloise brushed a single hair from her forehead and extended her arms slightly. "Of course, officer." Her soft tone did little to quell the tension, it only underscored the disparity. 2 officers confronted a dignified 70-year-old woman in mourning. In that charged moment, Rivergate's silence cracked. Eloise Carter, composed and unyielding, stood beneath the street lamp, no longer just a driver but the spark lighting a reckoning that would soon engulf the town. Officer Ben Morales's SUV arrived less than 2 minutes after Leah Jensen radioed for backup. The side lights strobed red and blue around Eloise Carter's charcoal Ford, painting rows of hedges and picket fences in urgent color. Eloise stood beneath the flickering amber lamp, arms extended at her sides, palms exposed against the damp air. Her breath rose in gentle clouds, grief and resolve mingled in her steady gaze. "Hands on the trunk," Jensen ordered, her voice sharper now that she had support. Morales approached from Eloise's left, flashlight in one hand, gloved on the other. In the mist, his silhouette seemed massive, part guardian, part judge. Behind him, Jensen loomed, ponytail bobbing as she balanced a firm stance. Eloise lifted her arms just high enough to rest her fingertips on the Crown Victoria's cold steel. She wore the same navy dress and gray coat from the vigil, the pearl earrings catching each flash of light. She felt the chill of the metal transfer into her palms, a small shock that reminded her how vulnerable dignity could feel under suspicion. Morales's voice was quieter but just as firm. "Ma'am, step back and spread your feet." Eloise complied, stepping away slowly, toes brushing damp grass. In that instant, a third presence emerged. Retired firefighter Miles Harding, on his front porch 2 houses down. He raised his phone, thumb poised on record. Eloise noticed the glow of his screen through the haze. In Miles's trained eye, this was a moment that needed preserving. Decades of service had taught him when things were off, when protocol soured into prejudice. He pressed record, capturing Jensen's harsh tone and Morales's wary circling. "Do you have anything we should know about?" Jensen barked, shining her flashlight near Eloise's handbag. "Drugs, weapons, anything?" "Nothing," Eloise replied, voice calm despite her pounding heart. "Absolutely nothing." Jensen turned to Morales and leaned close. "She's uncooperative, possible obstruction. I'm placing her under arrest." Time seemed to stretch. Eloise watched Jensen's fingers tighten on handcuffs. She felt neither fear nor anger, only the familiar weight of injustice. With deliberate calm, she raised her right hand. "Officer, I've done nothing unlawful. I have a right to understand why I'm being detained." Jensen's eyes narrowed. "You can ask that at the station." She clicked the cuffs around Eloise's wrists. The metal closed with a distinct, final click that echoed louder than Jensen's boot on the pavement. Eloise winced at the pressure. Not from pain, but from the indignity. Yet she held her head high, an embodiment of every lesson Malcolm Carter had taught her. Dignity under duress, resolve in the face of wrong. Morales stepped forward. "Ma'am, please turn around and place your hands against the hood." Eloise obeyed without haste, each movement deliberate and dignified. Her white hair gleamed under the beam, her lined face resolute. Across the street, Miles Harding's video feed captured the tableau, two officers exerting force against a compliant, elderly black woman. He zoomed in on Eloise's calm expression, the pearl earrings, the rosary in her coat pocket, a symbol of faith and fortitude. Jensen spoke into her radio. "Unit 5 to dispatch, 1 under arrest, female, out-of-state plates, possible obstruction." Her tone lacked warmth, it carried the clipped efficiency of suspicion unchecked. Eloise turned her head slightly, voice firm. "Officer Morales, will you confirm what law I've broken?" Morales hesitated, jaw tightening, then shrugged. "Just following orders, ma'am." In that charged moment, Eloise understood this was never about traffic law. It was about power and control. She straightened her back, meeting Jensen's glare evenly. Behind her, the Crown Victoria's wet surface mirrored the flashing lights, an ironic testament to a night that should have been still. Jensen opened the cruiser's rear door. "Get in," she commanded. Eloise took one last breath of cold air, then stepped in sideways, folding into the back seat with the same grace she'd shown stepping into her church each Sunday. As the door slammed, the muffled click resonated like a gavel dropping on a case years in the making. Miles Harding lowered his phone. He didn't stop recording, not until Jensen and Morales drove off, their lights fading into the night. He knew this footage would speak louder than any shout, louder than protest signs. It would be the spark that forced Rivergate to confront a wrongdoing hidden in plain sight. Eloise Carter sat alone in the back of that cruiser, handcuffed to a moment that would change everything. And though the metal bit into her wrists, her spirit remained unbroken. News of Eloise Carter's arrest traveled faster than the police cruiser itself. Within minutes, Officer Morales's camera-equipped radio crackled with dispatch updates, only to be drowned out by another signal. The sharp ring of Chief Marcus Redding's office phone. "Chief Redding speaking." "Chief, it's Mayor David Carter," came a controlled but urgent voice. David's tone brooked no delay. "My mother, Eloise Carter, has been detained outside her own neighborhood. I demand an immediate explanation." Redding's hand gripped the handset. He recognized the name. Carter's mother led years of civil rights initiatives in Rivergate. This was not just a routine arrest. "One moment, Mayor," he replied, rising from his desk. Within seconds, Redding's shoes pounded the police station corridors. Officers paused in mid-conversation as he stormed past. At the intake desk, he barked, "Where is Officer Jensen?" The desk sergeant motioned down the hallway. Redding followed the path until he found Eloise, seated on a cold bench, cuffs still secured. Eloise looked up as Redding approached. She did not stand. She did not beg. She simply folded her hands on her lap. "Chief," she said quietly. Redding cleared his throat. "Ms. Carter, you will be released immediately." He turned to the nearby guard. "Remove the cuffs. Let her go." Jensen, flanked by Morales, tensed. "Chief, protocol, protocol." Redding's voice thundered. "You embarrassed this department. You arrested the mayor's mother on camera. And now that video is everywhere." Unbeknownst to them, retired firefighter Miles Harding's recording had already uploaded to social media. Hashtags like #JusticeForEloise and #EloiseGate trended within the hour. Local news outlets picked up the footage, contrasting Eloise's calm dignity with Jensen's officious aggression. By sunrise, Eloise Gate was national news, dissected on cable networks and online forums. At the station's front lobby, officers huddled around monitors. Cameras flicked between news anchors condemning racial profiling and civil rights attorneys labeling the incident predictable. A testament to history repeating itself. Younger officers exchanged uneasy glances, senior sergeants clenched their mouths in grim silence. Meanwhile, David Carter convened an emergency press conference outside City Hall. Flanked by his legal advisor and 2 senior aides, he addressed a sea of microphones and flashing bulbs. Eloise sat beside him on a folding chair, wrapped in her late husband's scarf, her posture unwavering. "My mother was wrongfully detained," Carter announced. "She was humiliated and treated like a criminal in her own neighborhood. This will not stand, not in our town, not in this country." The crowd responded with applause and chants of "Release Eloise! Release Eloise!" Reporters clamored forward, capturing every word. Social media users live-streamed the event, further amplifying the message. Within hours, protest plans formed on community pages, prayers and vigils were organized outside the station. At the same time, Chief Redding faced an internal crisis. The police union threatened pushback, city council members demanded answers, even the mayor's allies within law enforcement began whispering that Jensen had overstepped her authority. Redding enlisted internal affairs to secure all bodycam and cruisercam footage. He instructed his public relations team to draft a statement: "The city of Rivergate condemns any misuse of authority and pledges full transparency." Back at the station, Eloise rose from the bench once the cuffs were removed. She paused, placing her hand against the cool metal of the table. A rookie officer offered her water, she shook her head, resolute. Morales looked down, guilt etched on his face. Jensen met Eloise's eyes, and for the first time, saw not a suspect, but a woman whose silent strength eclipsed any badge. As Eloise stepped outside into the morning light, protesters lining the sidewalks cheered. Miles Harding, off-duty now, captured the moment on his phone, Eloise, hand in David's arm, walking free, a dignified emblem of resistance. This scene would become an icon for Eloise Gate, spreading across talk shows and front pages. By midday, City Hall's phone lines overflowed with calls. Some demanded Jensen's termination, others sought policy reform. Outside the station, neighbors set up candles and signs. An impromptu memorial formed where Eloise had been stopped. Candles flickering at dusk, names of those wrongfully detained written on paper. Church groups prayed, civil rights advocates gathered testimonies. Chief Redding watched the unfolding storm from his office window, hands clasped behind his back. He knew the call from Mayor Carter was only the beginning. Rivergate's reputation, and the public's trust, had been fractured. Now the real work would start: transparency, accountability, and systemic reform. As day turned to evening, the station's neon lights glowed against protest placards. Eloise Gate was more than a hashtag, it was a movement demanding justice. And at its heart stood Eloise Carter, calm, composed, and ready to lead Rivergate toward a reckoning it could no longer ignore. The morning after Eloise Gate, Rivergate streets buzzed with both outrage and hope. Protesters gathered outside the police station, candles in hand, silent vigils honoring Eloise Carter's dignity. Signs read, "Not here, not now," and "Dignity under duress," while church choirs sang hymns across the picket fences. By noon, City Council convened an emergency oversight hearing in the Town Hall auditorium. 5 council members, 2 state observers, and a civilian from the mayor's advisory board packed the dais. Media outlets filled every corner with cameras, microphones, and spotlights. Eloise Carter sat in the front row, flanked by Mayor David Carter, her posture regal, her eyes unwavering. Council Chairwoman Rosa Nguyen opened the session. "We are here to address the conduct of Officer Leah Jensen and to evaluate our department's internal affairs procedures." She paused, acknowledging the ripple of anticipation in the room. First to testify was Officer Miguel Torres, Morales's partner on routine patrol. Nodding to Eloise, he approached the podium. "I joined this force to protect and serve," he began. "But what I witnessed was neither protection nor service. I saw a compliant citizen treated as a threat, her only offense was living her life." His voice grew firm as he recounted Jensen's verbal aggression and the unjustified escalation. The audience leaned forward, even Jensen sat rigidly in the back row. Next, Miles Harding took the stand. "I recorded the incident," he declared, placing his phone on the council's table. "Not as a bystander seeking attention, but as someone who knew this needed documentation. The video shows calm compliance and unnecessary force. That's why we're here." Councilwoman Nguyen pressed a button, the footage played on the big screen. Eloise's quiet dignity in handcuffs contrasted starkly with Jensen's clipped commands. Gasps filled the chamber. Judges, lawyers, and local activists watched in solemn silence. Afterward, Chairwoman Nguyen outlined proposed actions: terminate Officer Jensen for serious breach of protocol and racial profiling. Launch an independent audit of the Internal Affairs Division, reviewing all sealed complaints from the past 10 years. Establish a civilian review board, composed of local residents, to oversee future complaints and disciplinary procedures. Mayor Carter rose, voice steady. "These measures are essential not just for my mother, but for every resident of Rivergate. We cannot allow fear to replace trust." He sat, the echo of his words lingering. The council voted unanimously. Applause erupted, not just for Eloise's vindication, but for the promise of change. Outside, the crowd cheered in solidarity. A caravan of cars honked, church bells tolled, and neighbors embraced. Rivergate had taken its first real steps toward accountability. Back at the station, Jensen gathered her belongings. Morales offered a quiet apology, she ignored him. In her rearview mirror, she watched the protest disperse, an image that would haunt her career. Inside Town Hall, Eloise shook hands with council members and activists. She thanked Miles Harding and Officer Torres. When asked for a comment, she said simply, "Dignity is not optional. Tonight, we restore it." Rivergate had witnessed both injustice and a powerful rebuke. From protest to podium, the community had shown that unity and courage could reshape even the most broken systems. In the weeks that followed, investigator Tanya Brooks of Internal Affairs dove into Rivergate Police Department records. What she uncovered was startling: 10 sealed complaints against Officer Leah Jensen, many involving Black and Latino residents, several dismissed without inquiry. Brooks enlisted Officer Miguel Torres to help gather testimonies. Together, they interviewed Regina Lopez, a single mother stopped thrice in 6 months. In her modest living room, Lopez described Jensen's impatience. "She said I looked suspicious," Lopez recounted, eyes welling. "My kids asked why the police followed us home." Next was Thomas Green, a retired postal worker pulled over after visiting a friend. "I signaled," he said quietly. "But Jensen told me she didn't see it and threatened to impound my truck." Green's calm demeanor masked deep frustration, another quiet victim of profiling. Brooks also reviewed bodycam footage from unrelated traffic stops. Patterns emerged: Jensen's flashlight sweep hovered excessively long on drivers' faces, her radio calls sometimes cited non-compliance, without evidence. Morales admitted he'd filed informal notes on 2 stops but lacked hard proof. By day's end, Brooks compiled a detailed report. It concluded that Jensen's behavior was not an isolated lapse but a pattern enabled by lax oversight. Recommendations included mandatory bias training academy recertification, review of all stops in the past year, and reopening previously dismissed complaints. In council chambers, Brooks presented her findings. Mayor Carter and Chairwoman Nguyen listened intently. The room grew still as she revealed data. 80% of Jensen's stops involved out-of-state plates or people of color. Fewer than 10% resulted in citations. One by one, residents shared stories at the public comment session. A local pastor spoke of trust eroded, a high school teacher mentioned students too scared to drive past certain intersections. Their testimonies formed a chorus of lived experience. When Brooks finished, Nguyen announced next steps: immediate audit of Jensen's entire record, placement of involved officers on administrative leave, and formal reopening of the 10 sealed cases. A special unit would also review, with civilian members, every complaint going forward. Rivergate's Oversight Committee formed subcommittees, legal advisors, community liaisons, and a panel of retired judges, to ensure transparency. Newspapers hailed it as the most comprehensive civilian police reform in Oregon history. Officer Jensen, now suspended, attended a quiet hearing. She insisted she followed protocol, but the evidence was overwhelming. Meanwhile, Morales and Torres began preliminary training on community police relations, an effort to rebuild trust. At the Carter home, Eloise reviewed Brooks's report. She reflected on how many others had suffered in silence. With Green and Lopez by her side, Eloise decided to host a truth circle at the local church, inviting officers and residents to share experiences and listen. On the night of the truth circle, faces filled the pews, young and old, black, Latino, and white. Eloise opened with her own story, voice gentle yet firm. She asked officers to speak first. One junior officer admitted fear, another confessed surprise at the depth of mistrust. Then residents spoke, tears flowing, wounds laid bare. By the session's close, a fragile bridge had formed. Officers and community members exchanged handshakes and tearful hugs. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was a start. Rivergate's reckoning was no longer confined to a single incident. It had grown into a methodical, systemic overhaul, driven by data, accountability, and the unwavering courage of those who refused to stay silent. In the spring after Eloise Gate, Eloise Carter stood before the shuttered Rivergate Public Library. Flowers bloomed in neat beds, the building's brick facade wore ivy like a badge of history. A small crowd of civic leaders, volunteers, and former teammates from Malcolm Carter's activism work gathered for an announcement. "We are proud to launch the Carter Center for Community Justice," Eloise declared, voice carrying across the courtyard. Named in honor of Malcolm Carter and committed to dignity, education, and accountability. Behind her, Mayor David Carter smiled, ribbon and scissors in hand. The ceremony set wheels in motion. Over the next weeks, architects and volunteers transformed the library into a hub of legal aid offices, training rooms, and a community hall. Donors from local businesses to philanthropic foundations pledged funds. City grants covered half the renovation costs, the rest came from grassroots fundraising spearheaded by church groups and high school students. By opening day, the center's lobby gleamed with fresh paint and polished wood floors. A reception desk bore the inscription, "Know Your Rights." Volunteers in Carter Center polo shirts welcomed visitors and handed out brochures describing free services. Pro bono legal consultations, Know Your Rights workshops, and youth mentorship programs. Inside, classrooms hosted weekly seminars. Eloise led the inaugural session on constitutional rights during traffic stops, her calm instruction a model of clarity. Attendees ranged from senior citizens to first-time drivers, all eager to learn the tools to protect their dignity. Next door, a youth wing buzzed with activity. Undergraduates from Rivergate University tutored local teens on civic engagement and debate. One group crafted a mural in the hall, interlocked hands in vibrant colors, symbolizing unity across differences. The center also housed a small media studio where Officer Miguel Torres and Miles Harding recorded testimonial videos for Rivergate's new Community Voices web series. Episodes featured stories from Regina Lopez, Thomas Green, and others. Each clip reinforcing the message that lived experiences drive reform. Mayor Carter allocated an annual city budget line to the center, ensuring sustainability. He attended every ribbon-cutting event, sometimes joining Eloise in offering opening remarks. This center is not a monument to the past, he'd say, but a living institution shaping our future. 3 months in, the Carter Center hosted its first Community Police Forum. Uniformed officers sat alongside residents in roundtable discussions, an exercise both tense and hopeful. Eloise moderated, guiding questions about trust, use of force, and cultural sensitivity. By the forum's end, several officers volunteered to mentor youth and assist in Know Your Rights workshops. Some residents expressed surprise at the professionalism and willingness of officers to learn. It was imperfect progress, but progress nonetheless. Local media praised the center as a model of restorative justice and a beacon for rural communities. Eloise received invitations to speak at statewide conferences. She graciously sent representatives, focusing her energies on running the center. As summer arrived, the Carter Center became a hive of civic life, legal clinics, art exhibits on social justice, and remembrance ceremonies for victims of profiling. Eloise often walked the halls, greeting newcomers by name, her presence a constant reminder that dignity and empowerment could flourish even after trauma. Rivergate, once fractured by Eloise Gate, now rallied around her vision. The Carter Center stood not merely as a building, but as living proof that justice, when pursued with grace and resolve, could reshape a community from the inside out. A year after the Carter Center's grand opening, Rivergate celebrated Carter Day in Malcolm's honor. The streets bustled with parades, local bands, and booths offering free legal pamphlets. Eloise Carter, now affectionately called Mama Carter, sat at a central pavilion, signing copies of her memoir, standing quietly, and offering gentle words of encouragement to visitors. Among the crowd was Tiana Marshall, the young girl who first scribbled, "When I grow up, I want to build something like this." Now a college sophomore interning at the center, Tiana led tours for civic education visitors, her enthusiasm reflecting Eloise's enduring influence. Across town, Chief Marcus Redding launched a pilot program within the police department, mandatory biannual bias training and a revamped complaints portal overseen by a civilian board. Officer Jensen's termination remained a cautionary tale. New officers studied her case in ethics classes. Officer Morales, once silent, now volunteered at the center's Know Your Rights workshops. On the national stage, Eloise declined speaking invitations to focus on local work, but her name appeared in scholar articles and civil rights roundtables. Senator Angela Martinez proposed a bill, the Carter Act, encouraging similar community police partnership centers in rural America. Eloise provided counsel behind the scenes, her quiet voice guiding policy from her office window overlooking the lavender beds once planted by Malcolm. In Rivergate's town hall, Mayor David Carter reviewed correspondence from mayors in 5 states requesting guidance. He paused on a letter from the National Civil Rights Museum. It invited Eloise to join its Hall of Honor. He placed the letter on her desk, knowing she would ponder it before deciding. That evening, Eloise walked the garden path behind the center, her cardigan wrapped against the cool breeze. She paused by the bronze plaque, for those who stood when it was easier to be silent. She placed her hand on the inscription, thinking of every life changed by that misty night's injustice. Turning back, she saw Tiana and her mother lighting candles at a small memorial bench. Their soft murmurs of gratitude reminded Eloise that her story had become a movement. One that would outlast her. As stars glittered overhead, Eloise whispered into the hush, "It's not about me. It's about all of us." And in that moment, Rivergate's future felt wide open, a legacy carried forward by every voice brave enough to be heard.